My husband died saving his white moonlight in the sea. By the time they notified me, his body had almost been eaten clean by fish. The staff asked if I wanted them to retrieve the body. I waved my hand firmly, refusing to waste public resources. I took the police certificate and immediately had my husband's household registration cancelled. After contacting my husband's lawyer, I finally couldn't hold back my laughter. I popped open a bottle of champagne late that night. Instead of only getting half the estate, I'd get 2/3 now. This called for a celebration. My husband Asher Shang was dead. He had taken his white moonlight Nora Dong on a ferry cruise. A huge wave had hit, and the boat crashed into the rocks. He'd given his life jacket to Nora Dong and died in the sea. When the police called me, they said sharks had eaten his head off. His headless body had been floating on the water, and a few fishermen had tried to pull it out, until another shark came along and snatched it away. So all they'd recovered were Asher Shang's wallet and phone. As a prominent entrepreneur in the city, everyone wanted his body found. The police asked if I wanted to send a rescue team to search for it. I waved my hand again. No need. I refused to waste public resources. An hour later, I went to cancel his household registration with the police certificate. The clerk even shed a couple of tears when she saw his ID card. Mr. Xiang was such a good man. My condolences, Mrs. Xiang. I laughed out loud. She was right. Asher Xiang was a good man. He'd been supposed to go get our divorce papers in 2 days, then marry Nora Dong. Instead, he'd died, leaving me a massive fortune. With no body, I had to burn some of Asher's things to use as ashes. So I burned all the useless paper from his office, plus his personal belongings. When I was done, I put the ashes in a plastic bag, planning to buy an urn the next day. I contacted my lawyer and started liquidating Asher's estate. 6 companies, 8 cars, 66 storefronts, 88 apartments, gold bars in the bank, plus his mutual funds and stocks. I was busy counting how many zeros that added up to when my lawyer said Mr. Xiang transferred 2 properties to Miss Dong before he died. What? I turned to my lawyer. I can get those back, right? They're marital property. True to his reputation as a 6-figure lawyer, he caught on immediately. That same day they recovered the data from Asher's water-damaged phone. And by afternoon my lawyer's letter had been delivered to Nora Dong's house. When Nora Dong showed up, I was just popping open another bottle of champagne. She grabbed a glass and threw the contents straight at my face. Clara. Gao, what's the meaning of this lawyer's letter? I dodged to the side and the liquid splashed all over the carpet. My Italian hand-woven carpet, I said, looking at her with feigned distress. Add that to the bill too. Who do you think you are, demanding these things back? Asher gave them to me. We were going to get married. They're mine. Miss Dong, do you even know the law? I sneered. Anything Asher gave you is marital property. I have every right to demand it back. Nora's face turned pale. She pulled out her phone. You never discussed this with Asher. I'm calling him right now. He'll never let you get away with this. I laughed out loud. Don't bother. He won't answer. Asher's in a shark's stomach. Nora's face twisted in anger. Clara. Gao, you're so cruel. You were married to him. How can you speak of him like that? I waited until she finished yelling, then pulled Asher's ID card cut clean in half out of my bag. What? You don't believe me? This is his ID. I cut it up this morning. Nora stared at the 2 pieces of ID, stunned, but still refused to believe it. You're just playing tricks. I'm calling him right now. You won't get a penny. She dialed his number, and a moment later, a phone rang in my bag. I pulled out Asher's phone and the screen lit up with the word wife. Nora's face turned deathly white. Why do you have his phone? I told you he's dead. Where's his body? Eaten by sharks. I spread my hands. Miss Dong, don't you remember you were on that ferry with him? How come only you came back? I thought. Nora dropped to her knees, trembling all over. Her eyes filled with tears, and they rolled down her cheeks like pearls. I rolled my eyes. My Italian hand-woven carpet tears are dirty too, for God's sake. Nora cried for a while, then suddenly stood up and ran straight for the marble pillar in the living room. Asher Xiang, I'm coming with you. I jumped back in alarm and grabbed my phone. Police, please come quickly. Someone's trying to commit suicide in my house. The police arrived quickly, and after hearing what had happened, they took Nora away. As she was leaving, I called out after her, "Don't forget to return my things, or I'll sue you." One of the officers glanced at me, his expression clearly saying, "She's devastated and you're still provoking her." I shrugged. It was millions of yuan. Anyone would be upset about that. The next day I started planning Asher's funeral. He had a lot of wealthy relatives, and I'd given them plenty of red envelopes over the years. Now it was time to collect. I notified all of Asher's relatives and hired a feng shui master to help pick a burial plot. I didn't like any of the prime locations he showed me. I wanted the one on the far edge bare, with nothing growing on it. The master shook his head. "No. If he's buried there, your husband's descendants will live miserable lives." I clapped my hands. Perfect. That's the one. Great feng shui, and it's cheap. After all, Asher and I had no children, so there would be no descendants to suffer. I bought the plot and an urn, then hired a funeral home to throw Asher a grand send-off. At the funeral, I pretended to cry while sneaking glances at the red envelopes piling up. They were all rich, and the envelopes got thicker and thicker, so thick I almost laughed out loud. Just as the funeral was ending, Nora Dong showed up. Dressed all in black, she led a 7-year-old boy by the hand and walked straight to Asher's portrait. The already quiet funeral fell completely silent. Everyone's eyes and ears were glued to her. "Rohan," Nora said weakly. "Kneel. This is your father." Just as the boy was about to kneel, I ran over and pulled him up. "Little boy, you can't just call anyone your father." Nora flew into a rage. "He's my son with Asher Shang." "Oh." I lowered my eyes. "If you say so. But I don't believe you." "Who can prove it?" "We can prove it." 2 more people appeared at the door, my mother-in-law and father-in-law, whom I hadn't seen in years. "Clara." "Gao, you bitch." My mother-in-law lunged at me the second she saw me. "You told everyone my son was dead except us. What are you plotting?" There was no way I was letting her hit me. I stepped back and waved my hand, and my bodyguards immediately stepped in to hold her back. I said calmly, "Mom, didn't you tell me never to contact you unless I was dead?" She'd clearly forgotten. She'd said those exact words when she kicked me out of the house years ago. "You poisonous woman, you killed my son. You did this despicable thing for money, you'll rot in hell." My mother-in-law struggled against the bodyguards, clearly trying to scratch my face. Luckily, my bodyguards were good at their jobs. They held her tight, not giving her an inch. I said, "Mom, don't you know how Asher died?" "He was with Miss Dong." "Rohan, come say hello to your grandparents." Nora cut me off, pulling the boy over. My mother-in-law immediately bent down and stroked the boy's face. "This is our grandson. He looks exactly like Asher did when he was little." She turned to Nora. "You've been through so much all these years, Nora, raising him alone." I felt sick watching this touching family reunion. I said helpfully, "Mom, you believe everything she says? We don't even know who the child's father really is." Nora flew into a rage at that. "Clara." "Gao, are you saying this isn't Asher's son?" "I'm telling you he is. I was pregnant when we broke up, and I've raised him alone all these years." My mother-in-law chimed in. "He's clearly a Xiang. You're just a bitter woman who can't have children of your own, so you're jealous." Emboldened by my mother-in-law's support, Nora started crying about how hard it had been to raise the child alone, about all the discrimination she'd faced as a single mother. "Oh really?" I cut her off mercilessly. "I heard you got married to someone else abroad and got dumped for cheating. That's a lie." Nora cried, turning to my mother-in-law. "I can take it, but it's so hard for the child to grow up without a father." My mother-in-law was moved. She turned on me again. "Clara." "Gao, you barren hen? You'll never understand because you're not a mother." "I understand, Nora," I said slowly. "Mom, even if the child really is Asher's, we need proof. Otherwise, anyone could walk in here with a kid and claim he's your grandson. Are you going to believe all of them?" "I have proof." Nora stood up straight. "Asher didn't believe Rowan was his either, so he did a paternity test. The report is still in the drawer of his office desk. Go look, Mom, and you'll see." Well. She'd already started calling her mom. Not just me, everyone in the room had a knowing look on their faces. This funeral was turning into quite the spectacle. Everyone was getting their money's worth. My mother-in-law immediately sent someone to Asher's office to get the paternity test. I tried to stop her. Mom, let's talk about this after the funeral. With so many people here, it'll be embarrassing if this gets out of hand. Mother-in-law snorted coldly. What? Clara Gao, are you scared that once the paternity test comes out, this child will be able to fight you for the inheritance? Let me tell you, you should be more magnanimous. If I were in your position, I would definitely recognize Rowan. There was no stopping her, absolutely no stopping her. After Nora Dong told them exactly where the paternity test was, someone quickly went to Asher Xiang's company. I took the opportunity to make a phone call. Less than half an hour later, the man came back. As soon as Nora Dong saw him, she rushed over. Well? Did you get it? The man looked troubled. No. That's impossible, Nora Dong screamed. Did you even look properly? I searched everywhere. The people at the company said ... The man glanced in my direction as he spoke. Don't be afraid of her, mother-in-law said, seeing what was going on. What did they say? They said the wife burned all those things a long time ago. Oh, that's my fault. I stepped forward. I just couldn't bear to see his things and be reminded of him, so I burned everything Asher Xiang owned. But I never saw any paternity test in there. Nora Dong's face turned black and she lunged at me, trying to hit me. Clara Gao, you vicious woman, you did this on purpose. You don't want my son to be part of the Xiang family. She looked terrifying and my bodyguards immediately stepped in front of me. Stop acting like a rabid dog, Nora Dong. Even if I had seen the paternity test, how would you prove it's real? You wouldn't even retrieve Asher Xiang's body. How am I supposed to prove anything? Nora Dong shouted at the top of her lungs. Clara Gao, you're a despicable person. You just want to steal all of Asher Xiang's inheritance for yourself. Mother-in-law had no idea I had refused to let them retrieve Asher's body from the sea. With Nora's outburst, everyone now knew. Mother-in-law's face turned dark. Why wouldn't you let them retrieve my son? You couldn't even let him be laid to rest properly. What right do you have to inherit his estate? Because I'm his wife, I smiled. Mom, why are you taking the side of a stranger? She's the mother of my grandson, not a stranger. You're the stranger, you can't even lay an egg. Give back all my son's money. Mom, I called out, stopping her mid-rant. Do you know why I never had children all these years? It's because you've done so many bad things you can't have any. That's true, I can't have children. I smiled coldly. But it's not me who's infertile. What do you mean? Mother-in-law froze. You saying it's my son? Yes, Asher Xiang is infertile. I clapped my hands, and someone immediately handed me a file folder. Family scandals shouldn't be aired in public. I never intended to say this, but you keep pushing me. I'm sorry, Asher, but I have no choice. These are his medical reports from the past 10 years. He lost his fertility 10 years ago. How could Nora Dong possibly have his child? Mother-in-law opened the file folder, and the papers fell out. Nora Dong picked them up and read them over and over, her face turning deathly white as she shook her head repeatedly. Impossible, this is fake. It has the official hospital stamp on it. If you don't believe me, you can go to the hospital and verify it yourself. Nora Dong tried to grab mother-in-law's hand again, but mother-in-law, who was frowning at the medical reports, shook her off roughly. I pretended to shed a few tears and turned to the relatives. I'm sorry for the spectacle. The funeral is over. You may all leave now. As everyone left, their faces were lit up with the joy of having heard a juicy scandal they couldn't wait to share. I ignored the three of them, put on my sunglasses, and walked away. A few days later, I've the lawyer's letter from Nora Dong. It stated that Nora Dong was filing a lawsuit, claiming her son was entitled to a share of Asher Xiang's estate. A few days after that, I've the notice for pretrial mediation, instructing me to attend on time. I was furious when I got it. I immediately called my lawyer and demanded to know why my lawsuit against Nora Dong hadn't gone to trial yet. But hers was already going to mediation. My lawyer explained for a long time, and I didn't understand most of it. The gist was that they were separate cases, and it was normal for hers to be processed first. I attended the pre-trial mediation in a bad mood. Nora Dong said, Rohan is Asher Shang's son. I said, Asher Shang is infertile. I have his medical reports. Your medical report only says he had low sperm motility, not zero motility. The doctor said there was still a chance of conception, Nora Dong said smugly, a smile playing at the corners of her eyes. Do your research next time, please. Oh, so what? I yawned lazily. Do you have any proof that this child is Asher Shang's? Of course I do. Nora Dong slammed a piece of paper on the table. This is a paternity test between Rowan and his grandfather. It proves my son is related to Asher Shang's father. Asher Xiang was an only child, so Rowan must be the Xiang family's child. I glanced at my lawyer, who kindly reminded her, that doesn't count. Mother-in-law slammed her fist on the table. What do you mean it doesn't count? Clara Gao, you're so petty. This child is clearly my son's flesh and blood. He has every right to inherit his father's money. So what if he's illegitimate? It's normal for men to have a few women on the side. Besides, this child isn't just Asher's, he's yours too. Having a child is such a blessing. I laughed. Calm down, Mom. The court requires a paternity test between father and son. Speaking of which, Mom, did you really not know that Dad has another son? Mother-in-law froze. I pulled out another paternity test. I never intended to say this either, but since you're taking the side of a stranger, I won't keep father-in-law's secret anymore. This is the paternity test father-in-law asked Asher to arrange for him between him and his other child. I pulled out photos and videos as well. These are photos and videos of the boy. He and his mother Luna Mu live in father-in-law's villa in the south of the city. Father-in-law goes there twice a week. There are dozens of nannies and bodyguards, and the chef is a state banquet chef. I ate there once, and wow, it was amazing. The more I talked, the darker mother-in-law's face got. I added helpfully, and don't be petty, Mom. It's normal for men to have a few women on the side. This child isn't just father-in-law's, he's yours too. Having a child is such a blessing. I threw her own words right back at her. Mother-in-law completely lost it, slamming the table and storming out. I laughed so hard I could barely breathe, calling after her, retreating back. Leaving already? The mediation isn't over yet. With mother-in-law gone, Nora Dong could see she was losing the argument. She pinched her thigh hard and tears streamed down her face. Sister Clara, I know Asher and I did you wrong, and you're angry. But you can see how much. Rowan looks like Asher. How could he not be his child? For the sake of all the years you spent with Asher, please leave something for his son. She sounded so pitiful that everyone in the room was touched. I finally understood why Asher Xiang had lost his mind the second he saw her. That face was made for playing the victim. But she had picked the wrong person to play it for. I sneered and repeated my question. How do you prove that child is Asher Shang's? The mediation was technically a success because Nora Dong dropped her lawsuit. Even if she hadn't, there was nothing she could do. Unless she fished Asher Shang out of the sea, even the gods themselves couldn't prove that boy was his son. When I got home, I drew myself a hot bath. After I was done, I called my aunt, who worked as a nanny for father-in-law. Aunt told me vividly over the phone that when mother-in-law got home, she immediately confronted father-in-law, got into a huge fight with him, and threatened to make the mistress pay. With the cat out of the bag, father-in-law stopped pretending. He told mother-in-law he wanted a divorce. He only had one child now, and he planned to leave all his property to the mistress's son. Mother-in-law cried, screamed, and threatened to hang herself. But father-in-law just left and went straight to Luna Mo's house. Mother-in-law had been used to getting her own way for so long that none of the nannies, including Aunt, liked her. So Aunt was laughing loudly as she told me all this. Finally, Aunt asked, so will father-in-law have to leave with nothing because he cheated? I told her, stop watching so many TV dramas. Cheating doesn't make you leave with nothing. Even when Asher Shang had decided to give me half the estate in our divorce, that had been him being decent. I thought mother-in-law would never actually divorce father-in-law since he would never give her half his property. But to my surprise, she did divorce him. However, father-in-law had already transferred all his assets, so mother-in-law only got one villa. Furious, mother-in-law stormed to father-in-law's villa in the south of the city and beat up the mistress. But the mistress called the police immediately. Mother-in-law spent a few days in jail, and in the end, even that villa was taken away as compensation. Now mother-in-law barely gets by on what little she gets from Asher Xiang's estate. But it's not enough to support her lavish lifestyle as a wealthy socialite. So I heard she's been looking for investment projects lately to earn some money for her old age. Amidst all this drama, my lawsuit against Nora Dong for the return of my property finally went to trial. There was no suspense in the case. I won, of course. But a month after the verdict, Nora Dong still hadn't returned my money or the house. She probably didn't have enough people to move all her stuff. Well, since I'm such a kind person, I rented a large truck and drove over there with a few strong men. Nora Dong held the door shut from the inside. Clara. Gao, this is breaking and entering. I pulled up a chair and sat down. Don't throw false accusations at me. The court awarded this house to me. How is entering my own home breaking and entering? Come out now, or I'll break the door down. If you break the door, I'll call the police. Go ahead, call them, I said. Let's see if the police tell you to leave or tell me to go. Nora Dong naturally didn't dare call the police. If she did, she would be the one who had to leave. Nora Dong naturally didn't dare call the police. If she did, she would be the one who had to leave. Just as we were in a standoff, a black stretch limousine pulled up behind us. I turned around and saw it was my father-in-law's car. Less than a minute later, my father-in-law got out. Seeing the scene I'd made, he frowned and asked, "What's going on here?" "Dad, she's trying to kick me out." The moment my father-in-law arrived, Nora Dong opened the door. She stood beside him, tears in her eyes. "Please do something about this crazy woman." I tilted my head and stared at the two of them. What a bizarre scene. Why was Nora Dong so close to my father-in-law? My relationship with my father-in-law had never been particularly good. But it was never as bad as my relationship with my mother-in-law. Yet after hearing Nora Dong's words, he turned to me and said, "What's wrong with you? Instead of staying at home, you come here every day to bully a widow and her child? What kind of courage is that?" Before I could speak, Nora Dong cut in. "She's trying to steal my house." I said, "This isn't your house. The court already ruled you have to move out." My father-in-law grew more confused. So Nora Dong tearfully recounted the whole story, exaggerating every detail. My father-in-law flew into a rage. "This is my son's house. He can give it to whoever he wants. What right do you have to take it back?" I'd always thought only my mother-in-law was unreasonable. I never expected my father-in-law to be even more shameless when he wanted to be. Fortunately, I wasn't afraid of him at all. I rolled my eyes. This house was bought after Asher Xiang and I got married. It's marital property. He had no right to give it to her without my consent, so I'm entitled to get it back. The court already ruled in my favor. Your disagreement means nothing. We can go to court again if you want. My father-in-law was taken aback by my defiance. Nora Dong looked at him pitifully. "Dad, I have no money. If I give her back the money in the house, how will Rowan and I survive?" My father-in-law thought for a moment, then held out his hand to me. "How much do I owe you?" "I'll pay for her." I was genuinely surprised to hear that. I pulled the itemized bill out of my bag. My father-in-law read through it page by page, his face turning livid by the end. "Clara. Gao, are you desperate for money? You even charge for a 1 yuan bottle of water?" I put on a pitiful face too. "Even a fly is meat. Every penny here is hard-earned." After finishing the bill, my father-in-law tossed it to his secretary. "Transfer the money to her later." I thanked him quickly. "Thank you, Dad. Asher Xiang is dead. Don't call me Dad anymore. Got it?" "Thank you, Uncle." My father-in-law turned to Nora Dong and said, "Move into my place today and give the house back to her." My father-in-law turned to Nora Dong and said, "Move into my place today and give the house back to her." Nora Dong was about to say something else, but my father-in-law shot her a look and said in a domineering tone, "My place is far better than this. Rowan is my own grandson. Even if the law doesn't recognize it, I do. His name will definitely be in my will." Nora Dong thought for a moment, then obediently started packing her things. She wasn't stupid after all. My father-in-law's Fortune was several times larger than Asher Shang's. I watched her happily load all her belongings into the truck and said kindly, Nora Dong, there's no such thing as a free lunch. You should think twice before moving in. Nora Dong's mouth curled into a triumphant smile. You're just jealous because you can't have what I have. Asher was rich, but he was just a second-generation heir. How could he compare to his father? It's a pity you have no children. Even if something happens to the old man, you won't get a penny of his fortune. Once Nora Dong had finished loading everything, she generously invited me to inspect the house. I sat down on the sofa and didn't move. Suddenly I asked her a question. Nora Dong, you already knew you were pregnant before you went abroad, didn't you? The Xiang family liked you so much and you and Asher were so in love. Why did you break up? I remembered that when Nora Dong first came back to China, Asher hadn't slept all night. He'd tossed and turned in bed, checking his phone constantly, afraid of missing a message from her. I didn't know what nerve I'd struck, but Nora Dong's smile faded instantly, and a look of panic crossed her face. What's it to you? Asher is dead, why do you care? I smiled. Nothing. I just have a feeling you'll come begging me for help one day. Nora Dong laughed, as if I'd told the funniest joke in the world. We'll see who ends up begging who. 6 months later, Nora Dong showed up at my door exactly as I'd predicted. She knelt in front of me, screaming at the top of her lungs. Clara. Gao, please save my son. Only you can help him. She crawled toward me and grabbed the hem of my pants. Asher's father is going to kill him. He's locked him up. I have nowhere else to go. Please help me. I took a sip of tea and asked, what happened? It turned out that my father-in-law's other son was sick and needed a kidney transplant. My father-in-law wasn't a match, but Nora Dong's son was a perfect genetic match. That was why he'd invited her to move into his villa. At first, Nora Dong had thought she'd struck it rich because of her son. But things quickly spiraled out of her control. Her son kept getting mysterious injuries, and there were near misses with falling objects when they walked down the street. It wasn't until Nora Dong found out about the kidney transplant that she understood what had been going on. She'd tried to take her son and leave, but my father-in-law had found out. He'd sent his bodyguards to take the child and thrown Nora Dong out of the house. Then you shouldn't be begging me. You should call the police, I suggested sincerely. I did call the police. It didn't work. Nora Dong cried. Every time the police come, he puts on a perfect act and says I can take the child. But Rowan has been spoiled rotten by him these past months. He knows he won't live such a good life if he leaves his grandfather, so he refuses to go with me. That's why I came to you, Nora Dong said, snot and tears running down her face. Please help us. After all, Rowan is Asher's own flesh and blood. Why should I help? He's your son with Asher, not mine. I acted completely indifferent. To my surprise, Nora Dong said, because Asher loved you. Nora Dong told me that Asher had always loved me. All the terrible things he'd done to hurt me, divorcing me. Being with Nora Dong had been because he'd been diagnosed with a terminal illness. Asher didn't have much time left. He didn't want to hold you back. As Nora Dong rambled on about Asher's love for me, my expression remained completely unchanged. I knew he loved me. And I knew he was dying. After all, drinking and partying every night, relying on pills to keep his energy up, how could he not get sick? And how could he not die if he refused to take his medication properly? I'd picked up Asher's annual medical reports every year. I knew his health better than he did, so I sneered. That means I should save your son? Nora Dong hadn't expected me to be so cold. It dawned on her slowly. You never loved Asher at all, did you? Far from it. I hated him. Nora Dong was desperate. There was no one else who could help her. She'd gone to my mother-in-law too, but my mother-in-law had lost all her money in a bad investment a few months earlier. She went to beg my father-in-law for money every day, and she was in no position to offend him now. Rohan, what am I going to do? Mommy can't save you. Nora Dong beat her chest in grief. I watched her break down for a while, then said, Nora Dong, do you remember when I asked you why you broke up with Asher all those years ago? Nora Dong's tears stopped. If you tell me the truth, I'll consider saving your son. Nora Dong bit her lip. After a few minutes she seemed to make up her mind. Because Asher hit someone with his car that year. That night, Asher had taken Nora Dong to the mountains to watch the stars. On the way back, it had started pouring rain, and Asher had hit a woman. The woman had lain on the ground, bloodied and unrecognizable. But Asher had been terrifyingly calm. He'd driven Nora Dong home first, then gone back to deal with the body. Nora Dong had been terrified Asher would go to jail, so she'd broken up with him the next day, and left the country with her family's help. When she'd come back after failing to make it abroad, she'd found that Asher hadn't gone to jail at all. In fact, he'd become even richer. So she'd thrown herself at him again. As I listened to her words, my hands began to shake, but my voice was low and terrifying. "Do you know what he did with the body afterward?" I asked Asher. "He said he paid the family a huge sum of money and that was the end of it." Bullshit. I slammed the teacup in my hand to the ground, sending shards of glass flying everywhere. Nora Dong stared at me in shock, and suddenly she seemed to understand everything. "Nora Dong, do me a favor and I'll get your son out for you." "Deal?" Nora Dong stepped back, frightened by the dark look on my face, but finally she nodded. 2 days later, Nora Dong went to the police station and reported Asher Xiang for a hit and run that had happened years earlier. The police filed the case, but since Asher was already dead, they weren't sure how to proceed with the investigation. That same night, however, a heavy storm hit. A pile of human bones was washed down from the mountainside on Tuxian Mountain. The police confirmed that the bones belonged to Lila Gao, a rural woman from the foot of Tushan Mountain, who had been reported missing 8 years earlier, and these bones were only part of her remains. The case was deemed serious, and the city set up a special investigation team. Shortly afterward, another witness came forward to the police. They said that on a rainy night 8 years earlier, they'd seen a car hit someone on Tuxian Mountain and drive away. Despite the heavy rain, they'd managed to write down the license plate number. The police ran the number and found that the car had belonged to Asher Xiang, the city's renowned entrepreneur, 8 years earlier. 2 weeks later, Asher Xiang's parents were arrested. They had helped their son cover up the hit, Andrun, and had dismembered the victim's body, dumping the parts in the mountains, rivers, and garbage dumps. Too much time had passed, and only the remains buried in the mountains had survived. The truth was finally out. 2 days later, I went to the police station to collect Lila Gao's ashes. Holding the urn, I broke down in tears. Just then, another woman arrived. Dressed all in black, she sat down beside me. She reached out and touched the urn, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, your daughters have avenged you." I looked at Luna Mu's face, my lips trembling, and called out, "Sister." Luna Mu pulled me into her arms and stroked my back gently. "It's all over now. Lila Gao was my mother. That year my father had a high fever, and it was pouring rain outside. My mother went out to find a doctor, but she never came back after she left. My father also died in the hospital because he didn't receive timely treatment. All of a sudden our whole world fell apart. After we buried our father, my sister and I searched everywhere for our mother. Eventually, we heard someone had seen a luxury car hit our mother. But when we asked them, they said they must have been mistaken, that maybe it hadn't happened. I knew they were just afraid of getting into trouble. So using some legal means, my sister found out the license plate number of that car. We investigated and investigated until the trail led us to Asher Xiang. From the very beginning, I married Asher Xiang solely to find out the truth about my mother's death. That's why I didn't care what kind of person he was or what he did with other women. I lay low for 2 years, and finally pieced together what had happened to my mother, from the things Asher Xiang mumbled in his sleep. I wanted to sue him, but I had no evidence. So my sister started getting close to Asher Xiang's father. Asher Xiang deserved to die. Even if he hadn't died in the sea, he would have died from his illness. And even if he hadn't gotten sick, I would have made sure he ended up in jail sooner or later. In the end, the Xiang couple were sentenced to death. All the remaining assets of the Xiang family were inherited by my sister's child. Sadly, my sister's child never found a matching kidney donor and died the following spring. When Nora Dong heard the news, she crawled out of the woodwork again after being gone for so long. She brought out the old paternity test and kept claiming her child was related to the Xiang family. demanding a share of the inheritance. Unfortunately for her, my sister is not as forgiving as I am. Fighting her for money takes real guts. My sister had no patience for Norodong's nonsense. She said just one sentence, and that crazy woman shut up immediately. Do you really think it was old Xiang who hurt your son back then? I hear he's just settled into primary school. Would you like me to cause some trouble for him? Norodong's face turned pale. This is a society ruled by law. What are you going to do? Nothing much. Just make your life miserable. Bullying a child is nothing to be proud of. Fine then, I'll bully you instead. My sister spread her hands. Your family isn't as rich as mine. I could ruin you financially without breaking a sweat. Norodong, who was already living off her parents, turned livid at the threat. No matter how unwilling she was, she had no choice but to leave quietly. But I hold grudges. So I got in touch with Norodong's ex-husband who was living abroad. Norodong hadn't gotten divorced because she'd cheated. It was because her ex-husband was a gambler who had gambled away all her money. I accidentally let it slip to her ex-husband that Norodong was now living with her parents, and that her family was quite wealthy. The very next day, her ex-husband flew back to China. I didn't hear much about what happened after that, only that both Norodong and her ex-husband ended up getting kicked out of her parents' house. On Qingming Festival, my sister and I went up the mountain to visit our parents' graves. We had their graves moved together as my father had always wished. The weather was beautiful that day. No rain. After we kowtowed, a gentle breeze blew past. The wind carried a faint, sweet scent of wheat, the same scent that had always clung to my mother. I like to think that maybe my father had finally found our lost mother, and they had come to visit us together. This story profoundly proves, what goes around comes around. Good and evil will always be rewarded, and justice may be late but never absent. The hero's family fled after a hit and run and cruelly destroyed the victim's body, thinking they could cover it up forever, but ended up with their family ruined and reputation disgraced. To avenge her mother's tragic death, the heroine endured humiliation and married the enemy for years. Teaming up with her sister, she uncovered the long-buried truth step by step and brought the criminals to justice. It warns us that all evil acts trampling on life will face trial, and temporary luck only plants deeper disasters. Always respect life and stick to conscience.